Let's take this discussion forward. In fact, Zomato is not just the first of the new business IPOs to hit the Indian bourses, but first of many, if you must. And with these new businesses, it's a little important to understand how to view them, considering most of them are loss-making on the bottom line. How does Main Street look at these businesses? Sudhir Guntapalli of ICICI Securities joins us now. Of course, they've written a beautiful note on how to watch, or the most important things to watch out for in all these new internet companies. And that brings me to the first question. So Zomato, there's Nykaa, Paytm, MobiKwik, all of them in the fray. Nearly everyone is loss making. So how do you value them? How do you separate the good ones from the bad? What are the new metrics of measuring them?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me here. And as you started off saying, the spectacle through which we have to view some of these new age businesses has to be different from the way we are looking at some of the old age businesses or old economy businesses. The reason I'm essentially highlighting this is most of these are 4 to 10 year old kind of businesses. And of course, there is a upfront brand building cost that they are incurring at this juncture. Secondly, most of these companies are into newer categories which have traditionally not existed in the old economies. So when you are trying to drive customer adoption into a new category, and when you are trying to build the brand, of course, there are some upfront investments that you'll have to do in the business, right? And most of these upfront investments will kind of give you back-ended benefits over the several years subsequently into the future. So this is essentially the brand you are building, which acts as a moat to the business. At this, in the initial few years, you are spending a little bit in terms of the brand, but that can act as a moat to your business for the subsequent several years to come. So from that standpoint, the way I would like to think about these businesses is that you'll have to view them through a different lens rather than the lens through which we are viewing some of the old economy businesses. Having said that, these businesses not making profits at this juncture will not be of significant concern for us, because we look at it more from a pre-branding marketing overheads kind of a unit economics. As we highlighted in our note, the key metric to note here is you have to look at a company with healthy unit economics. So the key here is identifying a company with a promising unit economics. When I say unit economics, you'll have to proxy it with contribution margin before branding/marketing overheads. So if that unit economics is promising, that gives a lot of confidence in us that these businesses will be sustainable and they'll become profitable over the long term. Accordingly, valuations, right? It's a optically misleading thing. So if somebody is looking at the valuation of Amazon when it listed in 1994, or if somebody is looking at valuation of PE multiple of Google when it listed in 2003, probably you are talking about a trailing earnings multiple of around 120 times. Recently, we have seen a tech company like Snowflake, which has listed at almost 185 times on a price to sales basis, right? But the point is, at the headline level, if you are doing a headline analysis, it appears very expensive, but that's an optically misleading interpretation in our view. The reason for that is most of the businesses have not yet reached their steady state in terms of the revenue potential, in terms of potential user potential, and in terms of the margins in the steady state. So if you are not actually taking a steady state pro forma kind of a margin structure or steady state pro forma kind of a revenue structure and trying to calculate near-term multiples or near-term valuations on that, optically it will be misleading. And that is something we are highlighting in our note, that investors should not get swayed away by the fact that most of these issues appear optically expensive. So if you go back in history and see the several examples that I highlighted, starting from Google, Amazon, Facebook, or Zoom, Bumble, or Snowflake in the recent past, almost all of them have this problem where at a headline level, they appear very expensive. But if you actually look at them from a steady state margin, steady state sales standpoint, they may not appear very expensive.
Okay. Sudhir, the economics per unit then, can you just give us a sense in terms of what you are working with when it comes to Zomato as compared to its global peers? And what is the trajectory that you probably expect for Zomato as well?
Yeah, Ekta, actually, without getting into exact numbers, probably I'll leave you with broad thoughts without actually taking forward-looking estimates or anything of that sort. The key to note here is that so far discounts has been a key drag on the unit economics, but it has come down significantly during FY21. In the last quarter, we had seen a bit of bounce back because as traffic started coming back to the platform, most of the internet companies are encouraged to do some amount of a brand or marketing spends, which is why we had seen a bit of an inch up in the last quarter. But my sense is on the discounts fronts, they should remain stable at the current level, or probably there can be a bit of an optimization on that front. In terms of the take rates, we see a mathematical possibility of take rates increasing further from the current levels of 18% odd on a net basis if you look at what Zomato or Swiggy are currently charging at a national level. That is number one. Secondly, as the critical mass on the platform increases, as more and more data comes into picture, you have a better ability to use analytics and bunch up more orders per one route or per one ride of the rider. So that also gives you some scope for further cost optimization. So we are essentially talking about, possibility of take rate / commissions going up, possibility of a delivery cost going down a little bit, and a little bit of a discipline in terms of discounts or cashbacks. So the unit economics is promising, is what I can say at today's juncture. But tomorrow, as in next year, next to next year, we would not really want to call out the forward-looking estimates at this juncture.
We take that point, and just for our viewers, I'll recap the important points you've made with regards to viewing new companies. One, you have to look at their high frequency of usage, look at the total addressable market, look at the data monetization opportunities, strong back-end operational muscle, unit economics that Sudhir just spoke about. And finally, the difficult piece to price, because for these companies, there is an outside chance of outsized growth coming in. And that's where my final question to you is, Sudhir, because just the way there is an outside chance of outsized growth, there is also a chance of outside disruption. So how do you price that in, invest in these companies from a portfolio standpoint? The disruption could be any other player coming in which has a higher of the above 4 metrics, because in that sense there would be lower barriers to entry. And secondly, there is the risk of regulation as well, the data privacy, take rates, gig labor, all these things. What are your thoughts, the outside risk of big disruption?
Yeah, it's a common misperception in our view that many people tend to think if a new company XYZ can come and burn a lot of cash, they can build a significant market share in this business, right? But we think that is not true. The classic example I can give you in hindsight is the example of Ola Cafe or Uber Eats, right? They had adequate cash to burn, but still they were not able to build very great market share in this business. So there are some moats especially when it comes to food delivery business, there are some moats. It can be the brand, it can be the operational muscle that these two companies had built over a period of time. It can also be the reach that they have to almost 150,000 restaurants in the country. And of course, the data that they have collated over the last 4 to 5 years of operations. So there are tangible moats to the business. It's not just cash burn, or it's not just the case that any XYZ can come tomorrow and start this business and probably become credible competition to Zomato or Swiggy. So that answers your first question. Of course, risk of disruption is there in any industry, in any business. We'll not rule that out. But the key to note here, especially in this context, is that there are very strong competitive advantages or business modes which these companies had built over a period of time, and it's very difficult for any new entrant to match up to those modes, or it will take at least 4 to 5 years sort of a lead time to match up to those modes. The second aspect is a regulatory risk. Regulatory risk is also there in many of the businesses. Here, especially you spoke about gig employment related risks, right? While this has been a problem in the Western countries, especially if you look at the CAB 5, which is California Amendment Bill 5, it has been a problem for US food delivery companies. Okay. Similarly, UK Supreme Court has come out with a regulation which has been a problem in UK, but this should not be a big problem in India per se, given the current social legal construct. Okay,
all right, Sudhir, that point is taken, and I think you've done a lot of comprehensive work when it comes to these new internet companies. We'll get you back to have a chat more in depth about maybe the upcoming IPOs as well as Zomato once it probably lists as well. Thanks very much for joining in and talking to us. We need to take a short break, but we'll get